Sony Interactive Entertainment presented the PlayStation Showcase 2021 on September 9th. The live-streamed presentation ran for about 40 minutes and showed off some surprising reveals, announcements, and updates on titles PlayStation fans already know of. There are several surprises and goosebumps, and we are definitely gonna talk about God of War. But first I have to present the whole presentation. The event started strong. The day that fans have been waiting for is finally here, as the long-awaited Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake has officially been announced. The game has been rumored for quite some time, originally being confirmed by way of Jason Schreier, but there's been no official confirmation of its existence until now. Commencing after PlayStation's Jim Ryan gave a short speech, the confirmation was a huge reveal to help kick off the show. While the teaser trailer was brief, clocking in at just over a minute, it did offer the silhouette of Darth Revan as a character. Seemingly Bastila soliloquizes about the Sith. The trailer then shows Revan igniting his lightsaber, illuminating him, and giving a look at his mask. The trailer flashes the remake's logo before stating a legend remade for PS5. Knights of the Old Republic is considered by many to be one of the best Star Wars games ever made. Developed by BioWare in the early 2000s, it offered a structure similar to Mass Effect, which it also helped inspire, allowing players to explore the galaxy and make decisions that would change the game's ending. In the time since, it's become something of a classic, a frame of reference for when fans ask about a Star Wars RPG. There was an attempt to follow in its footsteps with Star Wars The Old Republic, an MMO, but it never reached quite the same level of acclaim. Interestingly, this isn't the only high-profile EA game with a remake currently in the works. Dead Space is also getting a remake, which, if the two are of similar scope, might indicate how Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake will take shape. It's still too early to speculate, and with too little to be sure, but we are finally getting our wish granted. Following the trailer's debut, Aspyr Media posted a blog from lead producer Ryan Treadwell. Inside the blog, Treadwell provided more information on the game for those who may have missed its original launch back in 2003. However, the biggest reveal in the blog post is that Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake is a timed PlayStation 5 console exclusive at launch. Treadwell doesn't provide any additional details as whether this means months or years. The fact that we know it is developed with the support of PlayStation, as Disney trusted Sony and gave them the responsibility for the game development. It is also a slap to Xbox, where the original game was exclusive to the Xbox platform. Now they don't get the remake at launch, and Sony made the more. They know Star Wars is huge, and I am glad that they have been able to get the deal. I hope the game takes advantage of the PlayStation 5 and its features, and it being a PS5 exclusive, it should be godly. The blog post also explained how developer Aspyr Media, Lucasfilm Games, and Sony Interactive Entertainment have come together to create Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake. The original game was developed by BioWare in 2003, and was later ported to Mac, iOS, and Android by Aspyr. Jeff Keighley reached out to BioWare and EA to see if they will be involved in any way with the KOTOR remake. Although it seems that BioWare has yet to respond, an EA spokeswoman did not answer the question directly, and instead stated that the company is proud of our long-standing collaboration with Lucasfilm Games, which will continue for years to come. The absence of Electronic Arts is somewhat surprising because the publisher signed a 10-year Star Wars exclusivity deal with Disney in 2013. However, it has long been rumored that Disney has not been pleased with EA's handling of the franchise, with only 4 games published in the span of 8 years, one of which released as a budget title. And Lucasfilm Games already announced in January that it would be working with Ubisoft to develop an open-world Star Wars game, although that project will likely not come to fruition until after the EA exclusivity deal ends. However, EA claims that it will continue to develop Star Wars games even after the exclusivity license expires. According to the Sony blog post, Aspyr Media is rebuilding Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake from the ground up with the latest tech. A number of industry veterans, as well as some members of the original KOTOR development team, will be working on the remake. In addition to porting the original KOTOR and its sequel to mobile devices and Mac, Aspyr has also worked on other Star Wars games, such as Star Wars Republic Commando, Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy, and Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. fans regardless of platform will again get to experience one of the most beloved RPGs, now built from the ground up to match the latest technology. Treadwell also went on to confirm that in addition to the new technology, Aspyr has also brought in plenty of industry veterans to work on the remake, including some members of the original Knights of the Old Republic team. While Aspyr may not be a massive studio name for many fans like BioWare, the studio has extensive experience working with the Star Wars license. They've managed to bring plenty of classic games from this IP to modern systems, including Star Wars Episode I Racer, both Star Wars Jedi Knight titles, as well as Star Wars Republic Commando. For the KOTOR remake, Aspyr has been working hand in hand with the newly recreated Lucasfilm games to ensure that this latest version of BioWare's beloved RPG hits all of the right notes. While Knights of the Old Republic laid the foundation for today's Star Wars games, the franchise's gaming scene has changed dramatically since KOTOR. Titles like The Force Unleashed and Jedi Fallen Order have done exciting things with Star Wars, especially when it comes to their narrative presentation. It would be for the best if KOTOR Remake didn't change much about its iconic story, but there are so many more cinematic opportunities for storytelling. The KOTOR Remake reveal trailer demonstrated as much with its epic reveal of Revan, and the same can be done for the whole game to elevate it from the original. When looking for examples of why Knights of the Old Republic Remake needs to be built from the ground up, the best game to look at would be Final Fantasy VII Remake. Square Enix's magnum opus was remade in grand fashion compared to its source material, with a reworked combat system and enhanced exploration mechanics. It brought Final Fantasy VII into the modern age of gaming, and it was a decision that paid off spectacularly. KOTOR is in an almost identical position to FF7, and there's likely to be many comparisons leading up to KOTOR Remake's release. If the game fails to innovate in the ways that FF7 Remake did, it could leave many fans wanting for a more ambitious title that reinvigorates the KOTOR formula. There are few film-inspired games as celebrated as Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Despite being a part of the Legends line of Star Wars stories, and thus not existing in the current canon, Knight of the Old Republic has still left an incredible imprint not only on the Star Wars franchise, but also on video games at large. Familiar story elements can be spotted in the Clone Wars and Rebels television shows. While Mass Effect is effectively KOTOR's spiritual successor, the two games were even developed by the same company. But when KOTOR and its influence are brought up, its narrative elements tend to dominate the conversation. Everyone remembers memorable characters like HK-47 or Bastila Shan, and the game's big twist is on par with the moment Darth Vader first revealed himself to be Luke's father in The Empire Strikes Back. There's a good reason behind KOTOR's outstanding reputation. Its story is fantastic. Its gameplay has not held up quite as well. Thankfully, the newly announced remake of Knights of the Old Republic presents an opportunity to change that. Our hope is to give both series newcomers and long-term fans an experience that can live alongside the very best modern releases, Aspyr has stated before, and one can only hope one step towards achieving this goal involves updating KOTOR's more antiquated elements. KOTOR's combat is more a product of its time than it is bad game design. It's heavily inspired by Dungeons & Dragons, and battles play out like a slower, turn-based version of Dragon Age Origins. Players click on an enemy to attack them, click or use hotkeys to utilize special moves or items, and hope that their foe's health bar depletes before their characters does. The interface itself isn't bad, and conquering opposing forces does feel rewarding, but it's hard to justify the upcoming remake maintaining this brand of role-based combat given how slow-paced and chance-based it is. Thankfully, the remake has a lot of sources to take inspiration from when it comes to modernizing KOTOR's combat. Whether it's up-close melee encounters or far-range firefights, there's probably a Star Wars game that has previously refined that style of combat. Now, that's not to say that lightsaber-wielding characters should play like Cal Kestis in Jedi Fallen Order while blaster-toting builds run handgun as one does in Republic Commando, but it'd be refreshing to see Aspyr take some cues from the more combat-inclined Star Wars games to make KOTOR's battles more skill-based, while still preserving the tactical elements that RPGs are known for. The original KOTOR lets players forge their own destiny as either a Jedi Knight or a Sith Lord. Star Wars games loved experimenting with this kind of stuff back then, and like KOTOR's combat, this aspect of the game passed for the time. However, choice-driven games have evolved so much in the 18 years since KOTOR was released, that the game's morality system is laughably simple by today's standards. Most of the game's pivotal moments ask players to either be good or bad, the former bringing players closer to the light side, and the latter to the dark. However, the game almost always highly encourages one to be the good guy. Choosing the dark side options makes the protagonist out to be a comically evil individual who feels more like an alternate version of the well-spoken, kind, reasonable hero of the light side than they do someone who could believably fall to the dark side for a good reason, which is something that happens all the time in Star Wars. The most obvious example of this is perhaps Anakin Skywalker, who joined the dark side in an attempt to prevent Padme's death. Obi-Wan Kenobi even had a brush with the dark side during the Clone Wars. While witnessing Darth Maul strangle Satine Kryze, a former lover of Kenobi's, the Jedi Knight was visibly filled with rage and temptation to tap into the dark side in an effort to save his companion. As the old saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and it would be refreshing to see such a viewpoint expressed in the KOTOR Remake's handling of the dark side. As demonstrated by countless Star Wars stories, it's a lot more complex than just being a bad person, but of course, not all Force users fall nicely into either the light or dark categories. Some exist outside of them, and some embrace both. These Force users are commonly known as Grey Jedi, and the original KOTOR was actually one of the first pieces of Star Wars media to acknowledge their existence through the inclusion of Jolee Bindo, who describes himself as a Grey Jedi. Funnily enough, players can't actually be one in the game. It's impossible to operate in the middle. The closest available option is to make good choices half of the time, and evil choices other times, but that's not quite what makes a Grey Jedi. They walk the line between light and dark, because they cannot in good faith commit to either side. The absence of such an option in KOTOR is a little shocking, especially considering how big of a role one's choices play in the game. The upcoming KOTOR remake seems like the perfect opportunity to feature Grey Jedi front and center, and perhaps use it as an avenue to explore a different way one can bring balance to the Force. The Knights of the Old Republic remake has been a long time coming for many Star Wars fans, so it's going to be crucial that Aspyr gets it right. This is going to be a big project for Aspyr after a series of classic Star Wars remasters, so the developer is sure to have a lot of eyes on it for the foreseeable future. Although the game is still regarded as a legendary RPG, it's in need of a major renovation for today's generation. The game has no projected release window as of right now, so we will just have to keep their eyes peeled for any updates on the KOTOR remake in the future, and this a day one for me. And I cannot wait to feel the lightsaber with my DualSense in my hands.
Now they wield it. We face the greatest Sith in generations. They must be stopped.
Next up is Project Eve. Project Eve hasn't been seen in nearly a year, but its latest trailer at PlayStation Showcase 2021 certainly delivers, focusing on the game's combat. Korean studio Shift Up has been working on Project Eve since 2019. Last fall, Shift Up released new Project Eve screenshots along with an extended look at one of the game's bosses. From the limited trailers and screenshots that have been released, the game is set in a science fiction, post-apocalyptic world where the players control Eve, a young woman accompanied by a robot, in a fight against a grotesque alien threat. In the new PlayStation Showcase 2021 trailer for Project Eve, players get a closer look at Eve, the world, and especially the combat. Right out the gate, the trailer shows Eve fighting some sort of hulking alien creature, before being thrashed around and ejected into outer space. Expectedly, when the trailer shows gameplay, Eve is flashy and acrobatic, pulling off crazy combos as particle effects flash around the screen. The combination of the wild enemy designs and deep combat bring the gameplay of the Bayonetta franchise to mind, minus the hair combos, and which time, of course. Beyond the combat, the new Project Eve trailer showcases many subtle changes to Eve and the game's presentation. It appears that Eve will have multiple outfits in the game, being shown in the trailer in both the blue outfit as seen last year, and a new green-themed outfit. Furthermore, the designs of Eve's robot companion, the desolated world, and disturbing, tentacle enemies is reminiscent of the often oppressive world design of the Nier games. At the end of the trailer, it looks like Eve fights an enemy very similar to herself, almost like they are androids of each other as found in Nier Automata. If anything, this presentation is indicative that the game is progressing well, and for fans, is looking really promising. Sadly, the trailer does not offer insight as to when the game is coming out, so hopefully the next time it is shown it will not have been almost a year later. Considering the greatness of other announcements during the PlayStation Showcase 2021, the game is going to have some stiff competition, and I am definitely got my eyes on this one. The trailer shown during the presentation revealed that it's coming to the PS5, but it's not confirmed whether it'll be coming to other platforms. It's being developed by South Korean studio Shift Up.
당신이 왜 이곳에?
설마 이브, 저건 알파 네이티브야.
Fans of Gearbox's Borderlands series will be happy to know that the next spin-off in the series is right around the corner. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is coming to PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X and S on March 25, 2021. The trailer shown during the showcase gave viewers a taste of what to expect, offering lots of gun-filled mayhem to get into. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands has finally shown off gameplay, and the latest trailer for Tina's new adventure does not disappoint. The locations shown in the footage are extremely colorful, the enemies are varied, and the new mechanics get a chance to shine. Spells and melee weapons look extremely powerful, while the overworld map makes the fantasy setting even more immersive. However, while many may be excited about Tiny Tina's Wonderlands and all the new things that it seems to be bringing to the table, some may be a bit confused by its use of guns. While the game goes all in on its fantasy setting through colorful locations, character designs, and the new mechanics, the use of traditional guns stands out a bit. However, Tina herself has the perfect answer for those concerned with the high-tech weapons breaking the immersion of a fantasy setting. While Borderlands has some somber moments, the series has always put comedy first, and that is not changing with Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. After some of the guns are shown off in the new Tiny Tina's Wonderlands trailer, Tina breaks the fourth wall and directly addresses the viewers that may be confused by the use of guns in a fantasy world. Shouting "Shut your face and get shooting," Tina makes it very clear that she does not have an actual answer to the question, as it is not worth answering at all. Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is prioritizing fun over everything else, and this moment shows that clearly. The game is set in a make-believe world that Tina has created, with players living out her bunkers and badasses campaign. With the world being fictional, the answer can simply be that guns are in the world because Tina wants them to be. As for the real reason they are there, it is because they are a blast to use. While it may be a spin-off, Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is part of a looter-shooter franchise. As such, removing the shooter aspect of its gameplay loop makes little sense. However, while the Tiny Tina's Wonderlands trailer focuses mainly on the titular character's fictional world, there is a brief look at the real Borderlands universe once the trailer comes to an end. While Tina can be seen in an adorable wizard hat, as she is clearly having fun with her game, she is accompanied by two never-before-seen characters. While their names are not directly revealed in the trailer, fans can use subtitles to get confirmation on who they are, and it will be interesting to see what is done with them in future Borderlands games.
Ready, newbie?
Time for character sheets, baby! Alright, trailer over. No end credit scene here. This ain't no super duper hero movie.
Next we have the Forspoken, one of the 2022 bangers. Forspoken was first unveiled in March, earlier this year. The fantasy action game provoked many more questions than it answered, but it seems Square Enix is now ready to start answering some of those questions. The big one is that Forspoken is now confirmed for a spring 2022 release. As conveyed in its announcement, Forspoken revolves around protagonist Fry Holland transporting from real-world New York City to the fantasy land of Athia, where she has access to a variety of magical abilities. In the new PlayStation Showcase trailer for Forspoken, the antagonist of the game is introduced. Tanta Sila is described as the most powerful of Tantas, which must be the world's magic wielders. There's even a brief encounter between Fry and this villain in the trailer that doesn't go Frey's way. What stands out in the new Forspoken trailer are the game's visuals for its magic. In particular, Fry is shown using a variety of incredible magic, including planting bombs in both the ground and sky, pulling herself along in the sky, creating floating water orbs, summoning a large flaming sword, as well as a golden shield, and freezing enemies in a large shard of ice like Final Fantasy's Diamond Dust. Fry appears to have all of the natural elements at her fingertips, which she wields with ease. Traversal is also heavily focused on in the trailer, with Forspoken previously being confirmed to have open-world exploration. Fry is shown running very quickly and double jumping, which are core movement mechanics. However, the trailer also introduces Fry swinging from grappling points now too. Even more exciting, she appears to grapple in open air, and even summons platforms to stand on mid-leap. While Forspoken's visuals surrounding the magical spells and traversal are the most exhilarating portions of the trailer, a good amount of time is spent on the game story. Specifically, it takes its time introducing Fry and a second character. The second character is a voice from Frey's bracelets named Cuff, and there's likely much more to the character than meets the eye. Ever since the initial teasers for what would become Forspoken, it's been clear that harnessing nature would be a key aspect of gameplay, not just for combat, but also for traversing the vast open world. When jumping and gliding around like Jessie in Control, Fry appears to have earthy streaks around her shoes, suggesting that movement will also be elemental-based. Perhaps investing in air element upgrades will allow Fry to fly for longer periods of time, or the element of fire can let her explore normally harmful areas. However, the ability to combine these elements was really striking within the trailer, so possibly Fry could combine water and fire to create a steam jet and get a ton of upward velocity, once again aiding her exploration. Customization and progression could expand Frey's elemental abilities even further. As of right now, there are a lot of unknowns when it comes to Forspoken. It's unclear how many elements Fry can control, and to what extent her powers can go. Will Forspoken have a skill tree system like so many other open-world games? Or will it have story-based progression instead? As the Forspoken release date gets closer, these things will likely be revealed. However, one thing seems pretty clear right now: Forspoken could be a really fun power trip, giving players the freedom to not just explore the open world, but also mix and match their elements within combat. Would be a really great move for Forspoken. It would allow for a lot of diversity for how each player's Fry will control. Entombing someone in the rocky earth before eroding it with water abilities is sure to feel very different from setting an enemy ablaze. As mentioned above, it would add another layer of depth if combining certain elements allowed for the usage of normally unobtainable elements such as steam and ice. Upon hearing about elements, some people might think of the Pokemon series type matchups where fire beats grass, grass beats water, and water beats fire types. If Forspoken really leans into the elements being a part of every game system, then it would be unsurprising to see certain enemies have weaknesses and strengths against Frey's abilities. In the trailer, there are a couple brief seconds where Fry is fighting a massive fire-breathing dragon. It would be a very interesting decision should Square Enix make this dragon, at the very least, resistant to Frey's fire-based attacks. This would force the player to stay on their toes and not just keep using the same moves every time they enter combat. Expanding on this idea, there may be pieces of equipment that Fry can use to boost her water abilities while making her weaker to fire, for example. This would add further complexity to the moment-to-moment combat, especially if certain enemies have a weakness to an element that can only be created through the combination of two base elements such as fire and earth. Forspoken has gone through a lot of changes already, however, so this type of combat design doesn't seem too outlandish. As Forspoken seems to be drawing on Sucker Punch Studios' infamous series for some inspiration, especially when it comes to combat. It would be a great move to also borrow that series' karma morality system. In Infamous, every action and decision the player makes can either give them positive or negative karma. Having a lot of either also affects the player's abilities. Being a selfish person leads to less control over the powers and much more collateral damage. Within Forspoken, it would be really interesting to see not only base elements have morality tied to them, but also all the possible combinations of moral conundrums. Perhaps using a lot of fire abilities will cause NPCs to begin to fear fry, while water may have a calming effect on them and the world. There may be certain combinations that have an even greater moral value, such as the showcased ice abilities, which may not even kill the enemies, only freeze them in stasis. This is, admittedly, somewhat of a long shot to appear in Forspoken, but it goes to show just how far a single idea like elemental combinations can be taken. However, given the comparisons to the infamous series, Forspoken has the chance to take that karma system to the next level of complexity, especially combined with Pokemon-style type matchups. The open-world genre should be all about giving players the freedom and ability to do whatever they want, and this should apply to combat through the mixing of various elements to cause either mass destruction and hysteria, or the ability to bring peace to Athia. The PlayStation Showcase trailer for Forspoken showed off not just the magical abilities of main character Faye and the enemies she must face, but the dialogue of the game as well. Faye's dialogue in particular is enthused and irreverent, with grounded side characters. This makes sense considering one of the writers is Amy Hennig, writer for the first two Uncharted titles. If there's anyone who can bring character relationships to life in a fun way, it's the writer who made Nathan Drake and his crew so engaging. Further backing up this writing team is Gary Whitta, famous for several book and film writing credits. Foremost among these is Star Wars: Rogue One, one of the most successful standalone Star Wars films to date. More importantly, it contains the blend of magic and real-world solidity that Forspoken is showing off, playing up the mystical nature of the Force and ensuring the story's pacing remains urgent and on point throughout. Hopefully Forspoken will continue to showcasing his strengths as a writer. Alison Reimer, by comparison, has fewer writing credits to her name, and most of them are for television shows. However, she has extensive experience in continuity departments, specializing in keeping stories on track. Considering Forspoken's evolution over time, this is no doubt invaluable to make sure the story does not have any massive plot holes or holdover plotlines from previous incarnations. Finally, Todd Stashwick is more famous for acting than for writing. He is prolific, with multiple roles across a variety of TV shows. Previously working on a cancelled Star Wars game, his extensive experience with characters could come in handy, making sure Faye and the rest of Forspoken's cast stay interesting. If the writing of these four matches Forspoken's amazing-looking graphics, the game could well be one to remember. The game is beautiful, Belinska is beautiful, the voice acting and music is good, and this is also a day one purchase. Even now, with two big trailers and plenty of Forspoken gameplay available, the action RPG remains very mysterious. Square Enix appears to have a special game on its hands, but it may be holding back the most exciting elements of Forspoken for closer to launch.
Frey! No name for a demon.
I am the one you seek, the one and only Tanta Sila.
Up next, they showed a trailer mixed with gameplay for Rainbow Six Extraction. Ubisoft dropped a new 2-minute trailer focusing on Rainbow Six Extraction's story. It starts by building up the severity of the storyline within the game, calling the threat in Rainbow Six Extraction the worst the world has ever known. It even compares it to other global threats like hostage situations, biological weapons, and nuclear war. Needless to say, Ubisoft wants to make clear that Rainbow Six Extraction's conflict is an escalation unlike anything in the franchise's past. The remaining 90 seconds following the cinematic introduction show a shrunken version of what missions look like in Rainbow Six Extraction. It starts with infiltration using stealth, with silenced gunfire and melee executions. It then escalates with strategic attacks on groups of alien enemies that can't be taken down stealthily. Completing objectives like destroying key threats or rescuing hostages follows. There are also moments of surprise, like attacks from unforeseen threats including explosive enemies. Lastly, there's the largest threat of them all, an enormous and dangerous boss enemy. Throughout this gameplay breakdown, a narrator offers commentary not just about how dangerous and exciting Rainbow Six Extraction's gameplay is, but also touches on some more key mechanics. Namely, the narrator talks about how important it is for teammates to work together to overcome the threat. Together we fight for our future, and similar encouraging statements are made, pushing players to work cooperatively or risk failure. A blog post accompanying the trailer's reveal goes into more detail. Ubisoft talks about how each incursion is broken into 3 phases. Each phase comes with its own challenges and objectives, as well as rewards. Players can leave after each phase, or push further into the map for more difficult challenges. Through this style of progression, players will unlock new maps, operators, tech, and customizable cosmetics. Ubisoft even confirms that Rainbow Six Extraction will offer what it's named the Maelstrom Protocol, which is a special ranked mode of escalating challenges and the game's best rewards. Needless to say, when Ubisoft says Rainbow Six Extraction's story is built around the largest threat to the world in its Tom Clancy games yet, it plans to make players feel that in-game. I don't know why they did show the game in the showcase, but from this the showcase started to get a little bit down, until the ultimate surprise. After that we got Alan Wake Remastered that releases in October 5th, which we have discussed about in the previous video. After that it's GTA 5 again, and I didn't see any enhancements in that game. The re-release is releasing on March 2022. It just looks like a cash grab for Rockstar. So, I got nothing to say about that. Since the game's announcement back in 2019, Tango Gameworks has held its cards close to its chest regarding Ghostwire Tokyo, a supernatural action game slated to debut next year. While fans have seen some gameplay and gotten a glimpse at its world, today's PlayStation Showcase provided their most significant look at the game yet, offering fresh gameplay and new story details. The promo, which clocks in at just under 2 minutes long, is a fast-paced, but detail-rich teaser for the game to come, confirming it'll launch next spring on PC and PlayStation 5. Much like the other trailers for the game, it showcases Ghostwire Tokyo's spirit-infested take on the titular Japanese city, although this time viewers get a little more information regarding why it's overrun by harrowing ghouls. Story-wise, the main takeaways from the clip are the confirmation of Ghostwire Tokyo's protagonist and villain, with the clash between both becoming the focal point of the trailer. The latter seems to be the masked character that appears across most of the game's key art, with the creepy figure appearing several times throughout the promo. Over on the PlayStation channel, the trailer's description provides a few extra details on the foe, describing them as a dangerous occultist called Hanya. Meanwhile, the game's protagonist gets a short introduction, awakening in the title's nightmarish cityscape and finding themselves imbued with supernatural power. It seems they're trying to save someone from Hanya, with one section of the trailer seeing the protagonist call out to a girl in a hospital bed as the villain looms over her. Although little more is revealed about their mission in Ghostwire Tokyo, it seems the protagonist's abilities will allow the player to go toe-to-toe with the specters haunting Tokyo's streets, as the ensuing gameplay sees them blast enemies with psionic energy, use a yellow beam of light as a grappling hook, and fire projectiles from their hands. There's no shortage of unsettling spirits to use these powers against either, with the footage highlighting a menacing rogues gallery of monsters to face off against. From faceless Slender Man-esque creatures to towering, knife-wielding ghouls in raincoats, and even a horrifying demon that charges at the player on all fours, it seems there's plenty of enemies lurking in Ghostwire Tokyo's shadowy streets. The trailer makes it clear that Tango Gameworks is cooking up something unique with Ghostwire Tokyo, and players don't have too much longer to wait. Moving forward, Guardians of the Galaxy was shown, which is way more convincing than what the trailers before. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is an upcoming video game that will feature Marvel's popular heroic band of intergalactic misfits. For the new game, the developer Eidos Montreal is taking inspiration from the Marvel movies as well as the comic books for this new depiction of the Guardians and the challenges they face. Previous videos for Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy provided glimpses of the game's cosmic setting, the characters within it, and the main heroes themselves. In the game, players will take on the role of Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, and through him they will be able to lead the Guardians on another intergalactic adventure. However, the latest trailer has shown more of the villains that will appear in the game, the new trailer was revealed earlier in the PlayStation Showcase 2021, spotlighting the Universal Church of Truth for the game. The new trailer sets the Church up as major antagonists the Guardians will be interacting with and fighting in the game at some point. While previous trailers showed off the character Lady Hellbender, this trailer puts more focus on the Church and its members as a more prominent force in the game. A previous Guardians of the Galaxy cinematic showed the character Grand Unifier Raker, a member of the Church, and the new trailer shows a little more of the organization he leads. This includes the design of the Church's spaceships, their members, and hints towards their greater goal for the galaxy involving the Promise. A goal that rubs the Guardians the wrong way, as the trailer sets up a major conflict between the team and the Universal Church of Truth, which will even rope in the Nova Corps. The Universal Church of Truth is based on the group of the same name in the original Marvel comic books. In the comics, the Universal Church of Truth is an interstellar religious empire led by the supervillain called the Magus. He is the evil counterpart to Marvel's cosmic hero Adam Warlock, the character foreshadowed in a post-credits scene in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Going by the trailer, the game is leaning more toward Grand Unifier Raker and the figure known as the Matriarch as prominent members of the Universal Church of Truth in the game. Both originate from the comic books as members of the Church. The trailer shows that Raker and the Universal Church of Truth will be major villains that the Guardians will face. It even shows quick glimpses of what appears to be Raker's boss battle in the game. The Avengers game from Crystal Dynamics does not meet the quality standards of Spider-Man or Batman Arkham. I hope Guardians of the Galaxy does meet it, but I have a high doubt on that.
That was completely intentional. The Milano's on her way. Thanks, bud.
The upcoming Battle Royale Bloodhunt recently revealed some gameplay, as well as its intent to release on PlayStation 5. The game takes place in the greater universe of the Vampire the Masquerade universe. While Bloodhunt may not be the most conventional entry in the series, it does appear to be a refreshing take on the Battle Royale formula. Battle Royales have become common, but Bloodhunt is looking to bring some enhanced excitement to the experience. The game is currently available on Steam as an early access title, but revealed itself as an upcoming PlayStation 5 release at Sony's recent PlayStation Showcase 2021. The trailer begins by showing off Bloodhunt's bevy of customization options, which will allow players to create the vampiric creature of their dreams. From the trailer, it seems that players will have the option of customizing everything from haircuts to tattoos. There is even a wardrobe section to let players dress however they please. Bloodhunt's newest trailer showcase also revealed a large map that has become the standard for all battle royales. But this map has a twist: it is populated with NPCs. It appears that players will be able to use their vampiric abilities to drain NPCs for some kind of benefit, though it was unclear as to what exactly that benefit will be. Players also get a glimpse of Bloodhunt's unique vampire clans that they will get to choose from, each boasting 2 unique classes. The first clan shown is the Toreador clan, with classes named Siren and Muse. The next is the Nosferatu clan with the Prowler and Saboteur classes. Finally, players are shown the Broha clan with its Vandal and Brute roles. Just from the trailer, it is unclear if Sharkmob intends to add more clans or classes to the game, but the end of trailer does show some kind of advanced military-like force with technology able to combat the vampires. Players get a glimpse at the threat wearing heavy armor, and they have some kind of technology that allows them to drastically impact the various vampire classes in some way. While the Bloodhunt PS5 reveal trailer may not give future PlayStation players much information, PC players are able to join the game in early access via Steam. Bloodhunt's departure from its Vampire the Masquerade roots is shaping up to put an interesting and unique spin on the Battle Royale subgenre. Bloodhunt is a multiplayer Battle Royale title set in the Vampire the Masquerade universe. It's out now as a free-to-play early access title on PC, and will be coming to the PS5 later this year. After that there was Deathloop, which was unnecessary to show. They showed it so many times that more people are losing interest in that game, and it is in the waiting list. After that again, an unnecessary thing was shown, which pissed me off. I know PlayStation is putting their games on PC, I have raised my voice against that. But showing that PC shit in a PlayStation showcase, it bullshit. Now, in a gameplay trailer, we got a look at the beautiful game called tchia. Based on the video, there looks to be a lot to do, such as climbing, swimming, boat sailing, and playing the ukulele. There is even a glider similar to Shadow of the Colossus to help with traversing the area. Advertised as a tropical adventure, the game takes inspiration from New Caledonia, a group of islands in the South Pacific. According to the developers, New Caledonia is at the core of the development process. Both game director of tchia Phil Criffo and his partner on the project grew up on the islands. Even Awaseb, the name of the game studio, was chosen based on the history of the archipelago. Criffo noted that the culture of New Caledonia had a powerful impact on him, and he felt that it made sense to include that valuable heritage in tchia. When basing this upcoming PlayStation game on New Caledonia, Criffo emphasized the importance of honoring the culture of the islands, but also making it accessible to a number of players. Making something too instructional or aimed directly at locals would completely defeat the purpose for us, he said. While the game is designed around real-world New Caledonia, it includes some fantasy elements as well. An interesting game mechanic is the main character's power to transform into objects and animals on the island, reminiscent of the capture mechanic in Mario Odyssey. This feature in tchia is called soul jumping, and the developer noted that each captured object and creature offers different controls and abilities in order to solve a variety of puzzles. Furthermore, the developers based the designs of the New Caledonia Islands and the creatures inhabiting them on their real-world counterparts. We are drawing inspiration from the rich and varied local landscapes, flora and fauna, cultures, music, languages, folklores and traditions, Criffo said. The goal of the developers is to make exploring the game world feel fun and engaging for everyone, including those that have never visited the islands. John Robert Matz, the composer writing tchia's score, insists that work on the system had been underway long before The Last of Us 2 had released. Indeed, each instrumentation system features the same circular UI layout presenting different chords that the player can then strum. The character's fingers are arranged proportionally to the respective chords that players select, making it an immersive user experience with authentic finger placement. Kurt Margina, co-game director on The Last of Us 2, suggests that their game's features only share similarities in a coincidental nature. Margino explains that the UX design is perhaps the only logical or feasible means that either developer could find to produce an instrumentation design that would function the way it does. Matz playfully expresses that they had the wind cut from their sails a bit upon learning of The Last of Us 2's similar design for strumming on a guitar, but that no honest grievances are held. The feature is distinctly unique and seemingly the first of its kind in character or narrative-driven games, put aside from overtly musical games such as Rocksmith, Guitar Hero, or Rock Band that concentrate exclusively upon the simulation of playing instruments. Whether one game's instrumentation design came before the other is of little regard to the game's developers, however. Each developer respects the other's work in its own right, considering the purposes that the instrument system designs serve for each. The Last of Us 2's guitar sequences represent the final tether connecting Joel and Ellie's tarnished relationship, and players who adored this feature in The Last of Us may be excited to see what impact playing the ukulele has in tchia next year. When presented with any level of creative freedom, gamers do not disappoint. Some of the earliest instances of creating music or covers of songs with limits are from Animal Crossing's town themes. Players have recreated simpler versions of their favorite tunes like the Star Wars Imperial March and the main Harry Potter theme. Similarly, players have had a lot of fun with Legend of Zelda's collection of instruments throughout the series, like the ocarina and the horns from Majora's Mask, where players covered a variety of classic hits. In this same way, it would be exciting to see musical instruments and sandbox gaming cross paths in a way not unlike the software GarageBand, lending accessibility to those who want to produce music, but simply don't have access to the instruments and recording equipment necessary to do so. Presenting musical instruments in gaming could also be used as a fun way to teach a younger audience about music and instruments, especially for those who, again, can't afford to purchase costly instruments like guitars and pianos. Even though players don't get the same feeling of strumming a guitar when they pick out the notes as Ellie in The Last of Us 2, kids tend to catch on quickly, and they would learn about notes and even music theory. Whether geared towards adults or children, adding a fully playable instrument to a game would only be entertaining if it kept the game aspect of that. There are plenty of apps that turn keyboards into any instrument imaginable, But what made The Last of Us 2's guitar, and will likely make tchia's ukulele fun, is that they are a respite from the main gameplay. By tying together fun scenarios, or stressful scenarios, in tchou's case, with these musical mechanics, it gives players a sense of motivation, helping them catch interest in fiddling with music in the first place. Whatever the case, it's likely that tchia won't be the last time players get to tinker with a fully playable instrument, and it'll be interesting to see what the industry does with it next. Tchia looks to add its name to an impressive list of charming games created by smaller developers. While this title coming to PS5, PS4, and PC doesn't have an exact release date, the developers noted that there's much more to show in regards to customization, story, and open-world activities in the coming days. Before going into Wolverine, the big surprise in the showcase, let's take a look at Gran Turismo. Sony revealed a new trailer for the upcoming Gran Turismo 7 at the latest PlayStation Showcase event. This will be first time fans are seeing new footage for Gran Turismo 7 since its reveal trailer in June of last year. A sweeping pipe organ opens up the newest trailer for Gran Turismo 7. This is accompanied by various shots of cars and their components, before going into the seemingly extensive cosmetic customization options that will be available in the game. It then highlights all of the features that are present in the photo mode of GT7, while also giving players a glimpse at the game's menus. The final third of the trailer focuses on racing on various tracks, all of which look highly detailed. The vistas and the lighting continue to look stunning throughout the video, but more importantly, it confirms that an in-depth car customization system will be a big part of GT7. The above trailer is a beautiful showcase of the game's visuals as well as key features, and it does seem like Polyphony Digital will make good use of the extra time they received due to GT7 being delayed to 2022. The presentation and editing of the video also deserve a special mention, and it further raises the already high appeal of GT7 for both fans and newcomers alike. With Sony confirming that Gran Turismo 7 will target 4K 60 frames per second, along with supporting HDR as well as ray tracing, it is bound to be a technical showpiece for the PS5 when it launches next year. Gran Turismo 7 joins Horizon Forbidden West as marquee PlayStation exclusives in early 2022. The first quarter of 2022 is looking absolutely stacked for video games, with Destiny 2: The Witch Queen, Rainbow Six Extraction, Saints Row, and Elden Ring making up this list of noteworthy releases. Now, we are gonna get to the big bangers. Insomniac Games hit the ground running in the Marvel Universe with 2018's Spider-Man, offering its take on the wall crawler and his battles to protect New York City. Players have been waiting with bated breath since, wanting to know if Insomniac will stick with Spider-Man or possibly explore other corners of the Marvel Universe. It is now known Insomniac will be doing the latter, and will take up the adamantium claws of Marvel's most famous X-Men. Marvel's Wolverine was announced as part of the PlayStation Showcase livestream on September 9th, and is one of two new Marvel games coming from Insomniac. The CGI announcement trailer was short, showing a bar in disarray and several patrons scattered about following a possible fight. One patron is seen sitting at the bar, confirmed to be Wolverine after unsheathing his adamantium claws when another patron picks themselves back up and takes out a knife. Wolverine, also known as Logan, is among the most famous and popular members of the X-Men, serving as a regular member of the team since 1975. Born James Howlett, the Canadian mutant is considered one of the most dangerous characters in Marvel Comics, often walking a fine line between hero and anti-hero. He has been featured in comics, cartoons, and most famously on film where he was portrayed by Hugh Jackman for roughly 17 years. The PlayStation Showcase proved to be a big show for Insomniac, confirming two major Marvel games in the works from the studio. I have been waiting for this moment for a long time. Since the Wolverine game on PlayStation 3, which is one of the greatest superhero games of all time, we didn't get a proper X-Men or Wolverine game for a long time. Now that Wolverine is back, and is made by Insomniac exclusively on the PlayStation 5, this going to be godly, and I am all for it. The Wolverine from Insomniac Games is being helmed by Brian Horton and Cameron Christian, who serve as its creative director and game director, respectively. This duo led development on Spider-Man Miles Morales, so they have certainly proven that they are more than capable of delivering a top-quality game. Insomniac has the same goal with the Wolverine game as it did with Spider-Man, and that is to make something that is true to character's spirit, but also feels fresh and reflects the Insomniac spirit. And most importantly, Wolverine should be mature rated with all the blood and gore. That is very important. A detail sitting on the bar with Logan might imply a plot point in the game. When the camera first cuts to a close-up shot of Logan's hands, an eye patch can be seen on the right side of the frame and seen once again when the camera cuts back for the claw reveal. While it might just seem like an inconsequential item that could be found in the rough and tough bars that Wolverine often hangs out in, it has connections to the comics, as Logan wears an eye patch when trying to hide his identity. The eye patch is most infamously known for being the crux of Wolverine's alter ego on the lawless island of Madripoor when he takes up the name The Patch. The fact that the trailer featured the eye patch could mean that Wolverine is headed to Madripoor at some point in the game, or that he might have to fake his own death as he does in the comics. Despite not being a great cover, the eye patch is certainly a memorable part of Wolverine's history, so it might make sense that it could be included in the game in one way or another. As so little is known about Marvel's Wolverine that there's no telling if the eye patch is going to show up in the game, or if it was simply an Easter egg for die-hard fans of the character. A similar detail can be found earlier in the teaser with the license plate on the right side of the bar that reads HLK 181, which is a clear allusion to the Incredible Hulk 181, which was the first appearance of Wolverine in the comics. If Hulk appears in Wolverine, their fight is gonna be legendary. And also a number 1048 shows on the screen, which indicates the planet that Spider-Man is in. It looks like Insomniac is the works to make a Marvel universe on their own. Now that Marvel's Wolverine has been announced, one of the next questions fans had was who will be the voice of the infamous X-Men member. One industry veteran voice actor, David Hayter, expressed his desire to be involved in the project. For many fans, David Hayter is a legend as an actor and screenwriter. One of his most recognizable roles is the voice of Solid Snake from the Metal Gear Solid series, well known for his low, rough voice that captures the super soldier's gruff appearance and experiences. As for his involvement with the X-Men, Hayter was the screenwriter of the first two films in the franchise, as well as making an acting credit as a museum cop in the first film. With these factors in mind, many fans, as well as Hayter himself, expressed the desire to see him take on the role of Logan. Hayter's response was to a tweet that was asked shortly after Marvel's Wolverine was revealed at the PlayStation Showcase. It asked the fanbase if Wolverine should be voiced by Hayter, considering his history with being typecast with roles that utilize his baritone voice. Hayter admitted that the thought had crossed his mind after seeing the trailer, sharing the same desire that he'd love to be the voice of the fan-favorite X-Men member. Upon seeing the tweet, many other fans shared the same thoughts, wanting to see this happen in this upcoming Wolverine game. Some joked that since both Hayter and Logan shared Canadian nationality, the casting choice would be absolutely perfect. Other jokes ensued that involved Metal Gear references crossing over with X-Men, due to Hayter's past involvement in both franchises. I personally prefer Hugh Jackman, but I have no problem with Hayter's involvement. He is a phenomenal actor, and we have to wait and see who is the one that does Wolverine. Little is known right now, but naturally, the feral mutant will face off against a number of recognizable supervillains from the pages of the comic books. Wolverine has made many enemies over the years, so there is no shortage for Insomniac to choose from, but the following are possibly the most iconic and lethal characters in Wolverine's rogues gallery. The ing to Wolverine's young, Sabretooth is often seen as the Canadian superhero's archenemy, and for good reason. Having committed countless atrocities in his lifetime, with many directed at Wolverine himself, Sabretooth is as sadistic as comic book supervillains come. He is both cunning and hugely strong, making him a formidable threat in all respects. The villain has a close link to the history and life of Wolverine, as seen in the many cartoon and film adaptations such as X-Men Origins, Wolverine. Depending on how dark and visceral Insomniac plans to go with its interpretation of the famous X-Man, Sabretooth would be a great choice for one of the antagonists in the game, if not the main one. Speaking of bloodthirsty, ruthless comic supervillains, Omega Red is another name that would easily rank high on the list of Marvel nutjobs. Originally a Russian mutant by the name of Arkady Rossovich, he became involved in a super soldier program that transformed him into the freakish Omega Red. Cybernetically enhanced with 2 long tentacles made of cybernadium, a metallic substance meant to simulate the adamantium in Wolverine's claws, Omega Red is a vicious combatant that has crossed paths with Wolverine many times. His incredible reach, thanks to the aforementioned tentacles, would make for an interesting spin to the combat, forcing players to be on their toes and balance defense as much as offense. Wolverine is one tough guy, able to tangle and easily outmuscle most enemies he faces off against. But then there's the nearly unstoppable force of nature known as the Juggernaut, whose sheer size alone is enough to make him an intimidating foe. Having previously appeared in the cartoon and X-Men Legends video games, Juggernaut is hugely strong and surprisingly fast, where if he builds up enough speed while running it can be almost impossible to slow him down. Similar to Omega Red above, a fight with Juggernaut would help spice up the formula, encouraging the player to try other strategies as opposed to just direct force. Based on the ancient Algonquin legends of a man turned into a monster, the Wendigo actually fought with Wolverine in the superhero's very first comic book appearance. Being another character with abilities based on animal instincts and primal hunting skills, the Wendigo is a terrifying menace that would bring an element of horror to Insomniac's new game. Because of the character typically being placed into snowy areas, the game could bring the story to the Canadian tundra, pitting the player against the elements as well as this freakish beast. The Wendigo can stalk the player similarly to the Nemesis from Resident Evil 3, adding a layer of palpable tension and unease to the player who will otherwise be invincible as Wolverine. Speaking of Wolverine being nearly indestructible, there is one antagonist who could go toe-to-toe, or claw-to-claw, with the X-Man, seemingly forever. Lady Deathstrike has the same mutant healing ability as Wolverine, as well as her skeleton being imbued with the same adamantium coated onto his own bones. Having 2 almost indestructible opponents battle would be quite a spectacular sight, especially if Insomniac is making this an M-rated game and can crank up the visceral action to another level. Her appearance as the final boss of X2, Wolverine's Revenge, as well as in the X-Men film series, hints at how exciting an antagonist she would be in another game. Not all the villains that Wolverine squares off against need to have superpowers of their own, but can just be rotten at their core to get on the feral mutant's bad side. The man responsible for wiping Wolverine's memory and fusing the adamantium to his bones, Stryker, is the cause for much of the pain and sorrow in the Marvel superhero's life. Most may recognize the character from the film X2, played by Brian Cox. Stryker is a tyrant and is fueled by his unending hatred for mutant kind. If Insomniac plans to make Marvel's Wolverine an origin story for their interpretation of the character, touching upon his complicated relationship with the infamous mutant hero, while there have been several Marvel heroes and teams developed into video games by Square Enix, the announcement of Marvel's Wolverine being developed by Insomniac could point to the start of a new connected video game universe. Spider-Man is the perfect jumping-off point for a video game MCU, and Marvel's Wolverine looks like a solid way for such a franchise to expand. Wolverine has been featured on several teams throughout Marvel history on top of being the focus of major solo adventures. One of Marvel's Spider-Man's strengths was the inclusion of peripheral characters with consistent roles, such as Black Cat and Taskmaster. A Wolverine video game has the same potential, but can take it to a whole new level. With appearances as an X-Men, an Avenger, and part of the X-Force, Wolverine has teamed up with many of Marvel's other iconic heroes in the franchise's most pressing storylines. This makes Marvel's Wolverine a great avenue for the introduction of more superheroes who should get solo games. This list can become incredibly long, but that only highlights the possibility of Marvel's Wolverine being the first new branch of a video game MCU. Ignoring the potential for this franchise to grow doesn't seem like something in the cards right now. Many characters have already received Easter eggs in the first Spider-Man game. The announced released window of a third installment in the same showcase as the Wolverine-led game only draws attention to the possibility, while the release date for Marvel's Wolverine might not be confirmed between Avengers and Spider-Man Miles Morales, Guardians of the Galaxy this fall, and then the Spider-Man 2 in 2023. It's clear that Marvel video games are building up fan bases like the MCU. Leaning into this and using the in-depth world that was crafted for Insomniac's Spider-Man as a means to expand the universe could be a great approach. It could lead to the introduction of other X-Men, like Rogue, or major conflicts between characters like Wolverine and Black Panther. Even grander is Marvel's Wolverine potentially leading to another major title that helps establish a video game MCU, an all-new Avengers or X-Men title from Insomniac, the main characters for the growing list of Marvel games that Insomniac has under its umbrella, have all been members of the Avengers. While this is a status many of Marvel's heroes have shared, 3 iconic heroes featuring on the team all getting solo games feels like it should lead to something more. This may very well come to fruition with another Avengers game in the future. Naming mechanics may become a logistical problem, but the team makeup doesn't have to be. Logan, Peter Parker, and Miles Morales could all work together as part of an Avengers team. Marvel's Spider-Man 2 already looks like it will pit the 2 Spider-Men up against Venom in a longer and more cooperative narrative, making larger team-ups a viable future option. On top of this, the Avengers exist within the Spider-Man games, as their home tower reaches up over the top of New York City. While there are other teams and organizations to choose from, the Avengers are likely the one many fans are most familiar with. It's a staple in Marvel Comics, and the Avengers make up some of the MCU's biggest movies. Given enough time, a new approach to the iconic team in 2025 or beyond seems like a realistic option. With the continued popularity of the What If series, a path to variations on what fans know is rapidly becoming a part of Marvel's multimedia approach. A video game MCU is a ways off for now. Marvel's Wolverine looks to be in the earliest stages of development, and fans have a solid 2 years before Marvel's Spider-Man 2 releases. This could make Spider-Man 2 on PS5 similar to No Way Home all over again, but fans are likely willing to wait a while for the chance to go toe-to-toe with Venom. In the meantime, how this will lead up to Wolverine or a video game MCU will continue to be a matter of debate. There are many approaches to be taken, and working the heroes onto an iconic team is only one option. Marvel's Wolverine may open up the floodgates for a video game MCU, but could focus on new heroes entirely. The X-Men have been just as popular as the Avengers in the past, and have also featured in their own movies and games. Blade can boast the same with the addition of vampires, which in turn could lead the games down a darker path. The MCU may have needed classic members of the Avengers to establish a base, but the tectonic popularity that superhero media has developed with so many people over the past 2 decades provides a lot of flexibility for any future plans. Aside from the possibility of Marvel's Wolverine creating a gaming MCU, the fact that Insomniac is helming the game is a great sign for fans of the character. For such an iconic hero, Wolverine has been stuck in the past of superhero games, and Insomniac has been leading the charge of quality superhero games for the past few years now. We should be reassured that there likely isn't a better developer for the character to make a gaming comeback. Wolverine is one of the badass characters of all time, and there is endless possibilities to explore his story. This is just the beginning, and yet there is more to come. After that, another Marvel was presented to our eyes. Insomniac Games has been incredibly busy as of late, putting out Spider-Man Miles Morales alongside the PlayStation 5 last year, and releasing one of 2021's highest-rated games in Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart. At the PlayStation Showcase event, Insomniac announced a new Wolverine game that it's working on, and it also finally pulled the curtain back on Spider-Man 2, revealing some key details about the game and the process. The Spider-Man 2 trailer features both Peter Parker and Miles Morales as they battle thugs in the streets of New York City. A mysterious voice can be heard in the background, talking about seeking out a challenger that can match their skill. This voice is definitely the famous Spider-Man series villain Kraven the Hunter. But while that particular villain wasn't confirmed by the trailer, a different one was. The trailer ends with none other than Venom, played by horror icon Tony Todd, accepting the mysterious voice's challenge. The symbiote that turns Eddie Brock into Venom in the comic books was teased at the end of the first Spider-Man game, but some may still be surprised to see Insomniac pull the trigger on Venom so early. In any case, we will get to see how it all plays out when Spider-Man 2 launches in 2023. Insomniac Games recently took to the official PlayStation blog to discuss aspects of Marvel's Spider-Man 2 after its reveal during the PlayStation showcase. One key detail that Insomniac confirmed regarding the upcoming sequel is PS5 exclusive. In a PlayStation blog post following the formal announcement, Insomniac confirmed that Marvel's Spider-Man 2 is a single-player game. This will come as a disappointment to many, as co-op in Spider-Man has been a desired feature ever since the original's release. Insomniac Games' head of franchise strategy and studio relations Ryan Schneider writes, "We're so thrilled to continue the journey of both Peter Parker and Miles Morales in their most epic single-player adventure yet, coming exclusively to PlayStation 5 consoles in 2023. It looks like fans will have to wait a while longer for some co-op web-slinging action. What's more, it is unclear presently just how the game will split gameplay between Peter Parker and Miles Morales." Throughout the blog post, Schneider typically refers to them together, making one believe that they are being considered equals here in this game. For instance, he writes, "We're equally pumped to craft all new stories for Peter and Miles in this sequel, indicating that both characters are indeed being focused on." Perhaps Insomniac will split the game up as it did in Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart with Ratchet and Rivet. If not Rift Apart style, there are some other designs that could work for balancing Peter and Miles. In the dream scenario, players can freely change characters as they see fit, as if they were playing the story mode of Grand Theft Auto 5, with Peter and Miles having their own upgrade trees and skill sets. As many fans have noticed, Peter's suit looks quite different from the first game. The advanced suit was first introduced in Marvel's Spider-Man, and has since become synonymous with Insomniac Games' version of Spider-Man. However, going into the second installment, it seems that the advanced suit has received another upgrade. It's impossible to know what that upgrade is specifically, but one fan has already detailed every aesthetic difference between the two suits. Comparing the two versions of the advanced suit, there are several differences that go beyond just having the suit be a darker shade of red. There's numerous minute design changes to the eyes, shoulders, torso, waist, and arms of the suit. On the outset, it almost looks like a cross between the advanced suit and the amazing suit. It looks as though Insomniac Games is giving this version of the advanced suit a more classic feel to it. Although the advanced suit in Marvel's Spider-Man diverged from past Spider suit designs, it did retain the same color scheme and layout as past suits. Just based on the color of the suit alone, this version seems to possess elements that will make it uniquely its own. An Insomniac dev confirmed that the footage we saw was running in real time, and not CGI, which is amazing. The visuals are top tier, and the effect are top notch. The Marvel Spider-Man 2 developer took to the official PlayStation blog to reveal Tony Todd as the voice of Venom in its growing Spider-Man universe. Todd portrays the infamous Candyman in the horror movie series by the same name, and the deep, guttural sound of his voice propelled him to horror movie infamy. Simply put, he's a natural, perfect voice for Venom, who's supposed to be the most monstrous and frightening of Spider-Man's reoccurring villains. Insomniac also revealed that the voice actors of Peter Parker and Miles Morales, Yuri Lowenthal and Najee Jeter, respectively, will return to their roles for Marvel's Spider-Man 2, and with the way Ryan Schneider, the head of franchise strategy and studio relations at Insomniac Games, talks about the duo, Miles will be a playable character in the title, meaning players will get to use him to battle Todd's Venom right alongside Peter. Tony Todd's name may be new to some gamers, but the actor has more than proved himself over the years as a huge talent in the film industry. One of his most notable roles is in the Candyman horror films, where he plays the titular character, and he's become an icon in the horror genre with his appearances in the Final Destination series and Night of the Living Dead. Todd also has experience in the world of comic books, as he lent his voice talents to the Flash television show where he played the character Zoom. He's a staple in all parts of Hollywood, and Spider-Man 2 looks like it might be one of his most exciting yet. With all of the anticipation around Marvel's Spider-Man 2, that also means that there is bound to be a lot of pressure put on the game to perform well. Not only is it following up one of the most successful superhero games of the last decade, but introducing Venom is going to be a big move that could either go really well or really wrong. Venom is one of Spider-Man's most beloved villains, and one of the most recognizable characters in comics, so nailing every aspect of his character is going to be crucial for Insomniac. Luckily, putting Tony Todd in charge of the character's vocal performance should help out in a big way. Many fans have already reacted positively to how Venom looks in Spider-Man 2, but how he sounds is going to be just as important. The general expectation for Venom is that he sounds like a monster, with a deep growling voice that reflects his sinister eyes and razor-sharp teeth. The casting of Tony Todd is perfect because the man has been playing monsters for most of his career, whether it's the Candyman or the Flash's Zoom. He understands what makes an intimidating antagonist, be it physically or vocally, and that experience should translate perfectly to one of Spider-Man's most intimidating villains. It'll be interesting to see how Todd handles Venom when Marvel's Spider-Man 2 releases. Again, his voice perfectly matches the tone and atmosphere Venom creates. If the one line Todd delivered in this game's announcement trailer is any indication, players are in for an appropriately creepy villain when Marvel's Spider-Man 2 launches, and they'll get to hear plenty of him considering the ending of Marvel's Spider-Man set Venom up as one of this sequel's headlining antagonist. Sony owns the movie rights to many more Marvel characters than just Spider-Man. It's not just Venom, either. In fact, Sony has the rights to over 900 characters from Marvel's catalog. It's true that most of Marvel's comic characters are gathered under the umbrella of Disney when it comes to movies. This is especially true now that Fox, who own the X-Men and Fantastic Four, has been acquired by the House of Mouse. Yet Disney, and by extension Marvel Studios, don't have the rights to every character. Due to Marvel Comics selling the movie rights for its characters years before the MCU began in 2008's Iron Man, Sony has gobbled up a lot of Marvel licensing. The news of Sony's huge Marvel catalog comes from a report by Variety. According to the publication, while Spider-Man and related characters like Venom are the jewels of Sony's collection, they're far from alone. There are nearly 1,000 Marvel characters like Black Cat, Morbius, Kraven and more, that Sony could make games and universes about without any input from Marvel Studios. Obviously, the trailer's huge reveal is that Venom will be the main threat for Peter and Miles to deal with in their latest outing. Based on the dialogue, a playable Venom is not out of the realm of possibility, as it seems like he could be answering Kraven's call for a difficult hunt. While Peter and Miles will have to intervene, there is potential for Venom to briefly assist the heroes. Still, this looks like the classic, monstrous version of the character, so it can be assumed that Harry Osborn's Venom will be just as deadly as Eddie Brock's. As for Kraven the Hunter, there is plenty of potential for the villain to steal the show. With the focus on two main villains, it is possible that one will be defeated at the midway point of the game. Kraven could fill the role that Mr. Negative did in the 2018 game, while Venom could be the true threat like Doc Ock or vice versa. With Kraven often being overshadowed by adversaries like Dr. Octopus and Venom, giving him equal importance to the latter should make for an exciting and original narrative. Outside of Kraven and Venom, Marvel's Spider-Man 2's side missions will likely see each hero focused on a different adversary. For Miles Morales, a fight with Kingpin is all but guaranteed, as this was set up via the side missions in his spin-off game. Kingpin has threatened Miles' loved ones, and with the villain having the resources to find them, Rio and Gank could certainly be in danger. While Miles and Peter may come together for the main threats of Kraven and Venom, Miles may have to deal with Kingpin on his own. Peter could have an equally personal side story with former police detective Yuri Watanabe. Based on Marvel's Spider-Man's DLC, she will likely be in the role of Wraith once players take control of Spidey once again. An anti-hero from the comics, Wraith kills criminals because she no longer believes in the justice system, a transformation that is foreshadowed in the City Never Sleeps expansions. While she will not want trouble with Peter, he likely will not let her kill, something that will undoubtedly lead to a fight between the two. The final side villain that has been set up is the Lizard, as Dr. Kurt Connors appears in the post-credits scene from Spider-Man Miles Morales. Clearly missing his arm, a transformation into the Lizard is a legitimate possibility. While he could be saved for a possible Marvel Spider-Man 3, there is a chance that he shows up in Marvel's Spider-Man 2. If he does, there is plenty of potential for an excellent boss fight with the scaly antagonist. My most anticipated villain for this one is Mysterio, but he can be saved for the third one. With the Lizard being possible alongside 4 other villains, the next Marvel Spider-Man game could end up outdoing the Sinister Six when it comes to its villain lineup.
as long as I can remember, I have looked for an equal. One who could push me. One who could surprise me. One who could even beat me. Yet all I found is disappointment. Will one of you finally give me what I desire? Yes, we will.
And finally we got the endgame, the one and only almighty God of War. The trailer opens with Atreus approaching Kratos in a cave, discussing the prophecy of Ragnarok and his identity as Loki. He seems to want to help people, and has matured clearly, as he appears to be a few years older. He even asks Kratos at one point if war with Asgard is what his mother wanted, to which Kratos gets angry. Overall, the trailer seems to show them on a quest for a very important ally, the Norse god of war, Tyr. Beyond that, the trailer shows Kratos and Atreus in combat, as well as riding dog sleds. Overall, it's as impressive as many hoped, and while no word of God of War Ragnarok's release date is mentioned, things seem to bode well for 2022. Outside the trailer though, Santa Monica Studio would go on to confirm a few more details for the upcoming game. It was confirmed that Thor and Freya operate as the main antagonists of this title. That leaves a big question mark for Odin, but that also bodes well for an eventual third game. They confirmed this will be the end of the Norse saga, so I wonder if Ragnarok will be split into part 1 and 2. Where in the first part we make allies and prepare for war, and in the second part Ragnarok begins. Playing as Kratos and going up against Thor is promising enough in and of itself. That battle gonna be legendary and remembered for ages. Furthermore, Atreus' true heritage is a big part of the game, hinted at in the trailer when Atreus asks who Loki is. The game will also feature new runes and abilities, likely for both God of War Ragnarok's Kratos and Atreus, and players will be able to visit all 9 realms in the game. Indeed, while fans have been waiting for quite some time on this trailer, and there are still a ton of questions, it's hard to imagine how its first official showing could have been any better. While some fans may be sad Cory Barlog won't be directing God of War Ragnarok, switching directors has been a tradition for the series. After the incredible success of the 2018 God of War revival, many people were hoping for a repeat in terms of quality for its sequel. This means that they wanted to see Cory Barlog return as the director and one of the writers for the sequel that he set up. However, God of War as a series has never been about repeating the past, both thematically and practically. The fact that the series got its second wind in the brand new land of Norse mythology is proof of this fact. Thematically, so much of the story for 2018's God of War revolved around Kratos attempting to change from a bloodthirsty god killer to a good father, and the conflicts that such a drastic change can cause. The series has always been about not living in the past and attempting to grow as a person. The original God of War games were set in Greek mythology and dealt with Kratos stopping at nothing to have his revenge for being tricked into murdering his family. Though his methods may have been a little extreme, once that goal was met, Kratos finally reached a sense of peace and was able to move on. Kratos' peace was unfortunately short-lived when his wife, Faye, died and his past began to haunt him once again. Practically, the job of game director is an intense one, to say the least. At a well-known studio such as Sony Santa Monica, it simply isn't feasible for someone to direct 2 games in the same series back-to-back. In fact, there is a long precedent for switching God of War directors after each game. Ever since the first God of War in 2005 by David Jaffe, the series has had a new director for each entry with no repeats until Barlog directed 2018's God of War. This is not to say that Cory Barlog will have nothing to do with God of War Ragnarok, as his tweets seem to suggest. He will still be acting as a producer for the title. Cory Barlog have great confidence on this guy, Eric Williams, and we shall see what he could do with it. Overall, Cory is the mastermind behind all of God of War since the original. He also said he is working on another project, so there is more to come. In the post-showcase interviews, the role of director was confirmed to be belonging to Eric Williams instead of Cory Barlog. Williams has a long list of video game credits within not just the industry, but the God of War franchise as well. He got his start in the industry working as a designer and lead designer for Marvel Games' X-Men Mutant Academy 2 and X-Men Next Dimension, respectively. Williams then worked in designing and defining the combat systems for the first two God of War games. Since then he has continued to provide design support and consulting for every game in the God of War franchise, but Ragnarok will be his first time directing a game. Given all the exciting-looking new combat mechanics seen in the reveal trailer, Williams' talent for gameplay design seems to be at the forefront. However, as was expected, the story and relationship between Kratos and Atreus will still be very much integral to the God of War Ragnarok experience. The trailer showcased many story beats such as a fight with Freya, a confrontation with the Norse god of war Tyr, as well as the last remaining giant being involved in the plot. The main driver of having a new director for each game is to ensure that there is a fresh perspective on the series, and to avoid telling the same story multiple times. Williams is intending on juxtaposing ordinary everyday interactions with big, exciting set pieces against the backdrop of Norse mythology. He hopes that this clash will lead to a surprising, but inevitable ending for the Norse saga. Within that same post-showcase interview, Cory Barlog essentially confirmed a new project but refused to share any concrete details. It seems likely that further news about Barlog's next project won't come out until after God of War Ragnarok releases. In any case, Kratos and company should be safe in the hands of Eric Williams at Santa Monica Studios. The decision to have someone else besides Barlog direct God of War Ragnarok was absolutely not made out of ill will, but rather keeping in tradition with the company's own patterns for the series. The PlayStation blog post explained that Freya from the previous God of War and Thor, who made a brief appearance in a post-credits scene. Thor has been the subject of God of War fan theories since he was seen at the end of the previous game, and was assumed by many to be the lead villain of God of War Ragnarok. Though, his relation to Freya, and how the two of them might coincide with one another during the main story might lead to bigger things. In addition, the blog post also confirmed that all 9 realms will be featured in the game, and will be available for players to explore. In the previous God of War, only a limited number of the realms were actually playable. The God of War Ragnarok trailer did show off a number of new locations that weren't featured in the original game, so it will be interesting to see what the other realms have to offer. While it was fairly evident that some characters would be returning for God of War Ragnarok, such as Mimir, Brock, and Sindri, what's considerably more exciting is what some of the new characters will add to the ongoing narrative. We also have the character models showcasing Kratos, Atreus, Brock, Sindri, Thor, Freya, Mimir, and Gerboda, one of the giants, Durlin, who seems to be a merchant, and Tyr, the Norse god of war, Thor in a more Viking-esque appearance than usual mainstream depictions, which is perfect. In the post, it is also revealed that Thor will be voiced by Ryan Hurst in God of War Ragnarok, who is most commonly known for his roles in the movies Remember the Titans and Saving Private Ryan. In addition, it has also been revealed that Ratatoskr, the squirrel messenger god, will also be making a more significant appearance for the sequel. In the last game, people were able to summon Ratatoskr to bring them useful items like health stones or rage stones. Now, Ratatoskr will have its own scenes and voice actor to accompany players along their journey. Tyr did not make a direct appearance in the last God of War, and whether or not the Norse god of war was even alive was left ambiguous, even if he was shown imprisoned by Odin and Thor in a mural. The new trailer, however, confirms that Tyr is alive during God of War Ragnarok, and he even appeared in person, towering over Kratos as the ghost of Sparta asked for his aid. Beyond his size, Tyr's appearance had some notable features that have huge implications for the story of God of War Ragnarok and its version of the Norse end times. In one part of the new trailer, Atreus approaches Tyr, who is slumped on the ground and appears to be bound by a rope. In this shot, it's clear that Tyr has 2 hands. The Tyr of Norse mythology lost his right hand during the binding of Fenrir, the great wolf who was prophesied to devour Odin during the final battle of Ragnarok. In the myths, Tyr offered his right hand to the wolf as part of a promise that if Fenrir was bound the beast could bite his hand off. The Aesir bound Fenrir in the hopes of preventing him devouring Odin, and Tyr voluntarily lost his hand, a moment often used to show how honorable the god was. Not only does God of War Ragnarok's Tyr appear to have two hands, but his right hand has some kind of binding around the wrist. It could be that Tyr's hand was in fact bitten off by Fenrir, and that the bindings are from its reattachment. Another possibility is that, in the God of War timeline, Fenrir has not been bound yet. However, this seems unlikely for a few reasons. For a start, Ragnarok appears to be well underway in God of War Ragnarok, while in the myths Fenrir was bound before the events of Ragnarok and breaks free after the end of Fimbulwinter. Second, there are several allusions to the binding of Fenrir in God of War 4. Mimir mentions the wolf by one of his alternate names, Hrodvitnir, and in another conversation explains how the dwarves Brock and Sindri once made an unbreakable chain using some of the same reagents Kratos and Atreus are gathering for Motsognir's corpse. These ingredients include a bird's spit and a cat's footstep, which were used to make Gleipnir, the chain used to bind Fenrir. It seems possible then that the version of Tyr seen in the most recent God of War Ragnarok trailer was already involved in the binding of Fenrir, and that he lost his hand before having it reattached with whatever binding can briefly be seen in the trailer. God of War 2018 also suggests, however, that the world serpent seen in God of War's Lake of Nine was sent back in time from Ragnarok when his fight with Thor shook the Tree of Life with such force that it splintered. It's possible that if time travel is involved in God of War Ragnarok, this Tyr hasn't lost his hand yet. It's also possible, because the Tyr in the trailer is bound by his right hand, that through a cruel twist of fate someone will have to chop off Tyr's hand to free the Norse God of War. The rope binding Tyr's hand is even attached to a metal symbol resembling a wolf's head, a direct reference to Fenrir biting off the god's hand in the myths. Tyr's hand isn't the only notable detail in the trailer. Tyr's long hair makes him very visually distinct from Kratos, which potentially debunks one fan theory from the last God of War. At the end of 2018's God of War, Kratos and Atreus come across a mural in Jotunheim which shows both the events of the game so far and some of the events of Ragnarok that are yet to come. Once Atreus has already left the room, a piece of tapestry blows aside to reveal the mural's final panel to Kratos. The panel shows Atreus cradling what appears to be a dying man. Many took this man to be Kratos, but he doesn't have the same tattoos or clothing that Kratos does in his depictions elsewhere in the same mural. While the depiction of Atreus remains consistent throughout, there is damage to the mural which leaves the figure in Atreus' arms without a right arm, which made it seem possible that it was actually a bait and switch, and that Tyr, not Kratos, would die. However, the figure in the panel is also bald, which fans now know God of War Ragnarok's Tyr is not. His great size also doesn't seem to be reflected in the Jotunheim mural. This makes it seem more likely that the figurine lying in Atreus' arms is Odin. Damage to the mural also makes it unclear whether he's missing an eye like the Norse Allfather. It's also possible that if time travel is involved, the figure is an older version of Atreus, who is fulfilling the part of the Ragnarok prophecy where Loki is mortally wounded and dies watching the world consumed by Surtur's fires. Either way, fans can now likely write off the possibility that the final panel in the Jotunheim mural depicts Tyr. The exact implications of Tyr having his right hand in the trailer have yet to be fully revealed, and as with so much in the upcoming sequel, the detail is only further complicated by the potential for time travel as introduced in the World Serpent's plotline. There are several bits of evidence pointing to the possibility that Faye, Kratos' wife and Atreus' mother, may have used her husband and son to trigger Ragnarok. There's quite a bit to unpack here, but the theory does make a lot of sense. Most of God of War is spent trying to fulfill Faye's dying wish to have her ashes spread at the highest point in all the realms. Simple enough, except the highest point in the realms just happens to be in Jotunheim, the realm of the Frost Giants. When Kratos and Atreus finally get to Jotunheim at the end of the game, they discover a series of murals that tell the story of their entire journey. They learn that Faye herself was a frost giant, and that she could see the future. She saw Kratos and Atreus encounter the World Serpent and knew they would kill Baldur. The death of Baldur marks the beginning of Fimbulwinter, which ultimately leads into Ragnarok. None of that ever would have happened if Faye hadn't requested that Atreus and Kratos take her ashes to Jotunheim. Without that inciting motive, Atreus and Kratos might have just stayed home. The Frost Giants hate the Aesir, and according to Norse mythology, Loki's primary role in Ragnarok is to lead the Frost Giants against Asgard. As a Frost Giant, Faye would have wanted to bring about the end of the Aesir. She might have orchestrated the whole thing through her seemingly harmless dying wish. She knew what Atreus would need to do as Loki, and she knew the steps that needed to be taken to get him there. Of course, God of War will put its own spin on the mythology, but Loki will definitely have a big role to play. Atreus is incredibly restless in the new God of War Ragnarok trailer, and as usual, Kratos tries to convince his son to keep a cool head. When Atreus pushes back, Kratos suggests that his actions might lead to war with Asgard. In response, Atreus argues that war with Asgard may have been exactly what his mother wanted. It seems odd to bring that up if there wasn't a grain of truth to the theory. There is no possible way that Faye didn't know what would happen if she asked Kratos and Atreus to take her ashes to Jotunheim. It was all part of a plan. Maybe that plan was simply to reveal Atreus' true name to him, but it seems like a weak motivation compared to the annihilation of the Aesir. Atreus is only speculating about what Faye wanted, but it was a memorable moment that probably hints at more. If it wasn't important, it wouldn't have been brought up in the first moments of the reveal trailer. Atreus will be going on a huge journey of self-discovery in God of War Ragnarok. As he enters his teenage years, he wants to figure out who he really is, and where he fits into the world as half-god and half-frost giant. He knows that the name Faye wanted to give him, Loki, means something, and he needs to figure out what it is. His journey will probably take him back to his roots to learn more about Faye, where she came from, and what she wanted for him. Atreus declares confidently at the start of the trailer that his story doesn't end in hiding in the woods, and he's right. Kratos doesn't know the full truth of Atreus' identity, but Faye did. She will likely have a big influence on how Atreus perceives himself and his role in the world. Even though she's the reason for the whole story, almost nothing is revealed about Faye in God of War. We don't get any insight into Faye's relationship with Kratos, and only get hints about the relationship she had with Atreus. She was a nurturing mother and a fierce warrior, but she was also very secretive. Neither Kratos nor Atreus knew about her true identity until after her death. If Faye really was trying to trigger Ragnarok and bring about the destruction of the Aesir, it could turn her into something of a villain. It's possible that she was just using Kratos and Atreus, and never felt anything for them. They could have simply been a means to an end. Because so little was revealed about her, the possibilities are endless. What's certain is that Faye will continue to have a huge influence in God of War Ragnarok. Hopefully, Ragnarok will give more insight into Faye's thoughts, her motives, and her relationship with her family. If she was trying to start Ragnarok, then her wishes directly contradict Atreus and Kratos' goals in the next game. The trailer indicates that they are determined to stop Ragnarok from happening, which seems to guide them to the Norse god of war, Tyr. They believe that peace might be the only way to stop Ragnarok, although the opposite is probably true. If there's only one guarantee, it's that nothing about God of War Ragnarok will be straightforward. Santa Monica loves its twists and turns, and Ragnarok is sure to be full of them. What's even more telling is that during the post-reveal discussion, Herman Hulst confirmed that Ragnarok would be the grand finale of the franchise's Norse chapter. That has a ton of implications, but there are a few things key players can gather right away. First, Ragnarok itself will happen and players won't have to wait another couple of years to experience the most anticipated moments, like Thor fighting the world serpent. If it's happening in 2022, assuming there aren't any more delays. Thankfully, the game is actually about both Ragnarok and Fimbulwinter. Second, if Santa Monica has any more big reveals up its sleeve regarding the Norse pantheon, they'll probably be included in Ragnarok rather than the next chapter of the franchise. Most of players' questions should be answered by the next installment in the God of War series, and hopefully, that includes the full truth about Faye. One of the main reasons that God of War's tale was so effective and immediate is that the entire game is shown in a single cinematic shot. There are no breaks or jumps in time in God of War. Everything flows smoothly as if it were a single event, including switches from cinematics to gameplay. Now it seems its sequel, Ragnarok, is going to continue this unique design decision. Matt Sophos, who was the writer and story lead on 2018's God of War, and is now the narrative director for Ragnarok, has been active on Twitter following the gameplay reveal of the eagerly awaited sequel. After praising the new director for the God of War Ragnarok, Eric Williams, Matt confirmed that the sequel would also be one continuous, unbroken shot like the 2018 reboot. While many elements of the 2018 God of War contributed to its significant success, its unique single-camera approach certainly assisted with its cinematic tone. God of War's stellar camera work and cinematography is something not often seen in the gaming world, and it is good to see Ragnarok continue with the one, unbroken shot approach. Overall, it's God of War. It is my greatest universe of all time, and all I can say is Ragnarok is coming. And that's all for the video, guys. Like and share the video for a greater audience. Comment your thoughts on the topics, and donations are always appreciated. Subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon, and until then, from SMPV, it's goodbye.
Are you coming with us?
You'll get your answer soon enough. Well, some of them.